Hello there, Mr. Sutton here, bringing you the IM321 Extra Practice number 3 solutions on FOIL and just generally multiplying polynomials. Now this one's got a puzzle that goes with it. Let's take a look at the puzzle. So the overall riddle we're trying to solve with this puzzle: what did the girl mushroom say about the boy mushroom after their first date? I can't wait to find out. So for each of these exercises here, we're supposed to multiply this thing out and find the answer down below. And whatever letter the answer is, we put that letter in the box that has the number of the problem we just did. So for example, if we found that the answer for number 1 was this O right here, I don't know what it is just yet, but if it were, we would put the O in the 1 box down here. So let's go ahead and see what the answer to this riddle is. For problem number 1, we need to distribute 5 to this 2n squared plus n. So multiplying by each of these, 5 times 2n squared is going to be 10n squared. And 5 times n is 5n, so we have a plus 5n. Looking at my answers, 10n squared plus 5n, that's answer choice S. So we're going to put that in the 1 box down here. On this one, we're distributing 3n to this parentheses. So 3n times 8n squared. 3 times 8 is 24. N times n squared, we're adding the exponents. 1 plus 2 gives us n to the third. And then distributing over to the next term, 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And then the n times the n gives us an n squared. So looking for 24n cubed minus 6n squared, that's L right here. And that goes with number 2. Next up, we have to multiply n squared by 4n minus 3. Distributing to each of these, n squared times 4n, we have a 4 still, and then n to the 1 plus 2, so n to the third power. And then n squared times negative 3, that's going to be negative 3n squared. Looking for that stuff in our answers, that looks like U right here. So that's going to go down in the 3 box right there. For this one, we're distributing negative 2n to all that stuff. So negative 2n times 4, that's going to be a negative 8n. Negative 2n times 5n cubed, well, negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. And then n times n cubed, adding the exponents, that's going to be n to the 4th power. So looking for negative 8n minus 10n to the 4th, that's A right there. So that's going in box 4. For this problem, we're distributing negative 6n squared to everything inside this parentheses. Distributing to the first term, 1 factor at a time, we have negative 6 times 24, that's negative 24. N squared times n squared, we have to add the exponents. 2 plus 2 is 4, so n to the 4th. And then negative 6n squared times negative 9, well, negative 6 times negative 9 is a positive 54. And we still have this n squared along for the ride. So negative 24n to the 4th plus 54n squared, that's choice R right here. So that's going in the box number 5. So now we're moving on to the next problem set. This one you'll notice has problems that are a cut above what we had to do before. Some of these are going to have 3 terms, some of them have multiple variables going on. So just generally a little bit more difficult. So we've got 4a times this whole big parentheses of stuff. We're just going to go door to door and distribute 4a to each of these. 4a to a squared, that's going to be 4a to the 1 plus 2, adding the exponents, 4a cubed. Moving on to the next one, 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. A times a is a squared. And then for the last one, 4a times 3, that's going to be 12a that we're adding. So looking for all of that stuff, 4a cubed minus 8a squared plus 12a. Got to be careful. There's one that's close to that with choice M, but it has the wrong number at the end. So we actually need G that has all that stuff, and that's going in the box number 6. For this problem, we have negative 2a squared getting distributed to all of these. So distributing to the 9, that's going to be negative 18a squared. And then distributing that to the negative a, we'll have a positive 2 out in front because positive comes from a negative times a negative, so positive 2. And then a times a squared is going to be a cubed, add the exponents. Finally, negative 2a squared times negative 4a squared. Negative 2 times negative 4, that's a positive, positive 8. And then a squared times a squared, 2 plus 2 gives us a to the 4th power. Looking for all of this, we've got all of that in choice H right here. So that's going to go in box number 7, back at the beginning. For this one now, we have two variables going on, a and b, and we're distributing a squared b to a squared minus b squared. So multiplying by the first one, a squared times a squared would be a to the 4th, 2 plus 2, and the b is along for the ride, so a to the 4th b. Next, distributing to this negative one, we still have a negative and an a squared that's not interacting with anything. B times b squared is going to be b cubed, so altogether negative a squared b to the 3rd. And it looks like that's going to be answer choice A. So A is going in the 8 box. For number 9, we have negative 3ab squared getting multiplied by all this. So we're going to distribute to both of those, and we're going to take each of these one factor at a time. There's really 3 things to think about each time we multiply here. So first one, we've got negative 3 times an invisible 1, so that's a negative 3 initially. A times a cubed is a to the 4th, adding the exponents. And then b squared times b squared is b to the 4th, 2 plus 2. Next, moving on to the next term here, negative 3 times negative 2, that's positive 6. A times a squared is a cubed. And b squared times the b to the 1st, 2 plus 1 gives us b to the 3rd. So looking for that in my answer choices, I think that's going to be L going into the 9 box. So we got 2 L's in a row there. Next up, we got 2ab getting multiplied by all that stuff. So 2ab times a squared, we still have a 2, we still have a b, and a times a squared is a cubed, so that's really the only thing that is going to change there. Next, multiplying by 4ab, 2 times 4 is 8, a times a is a squared, b times b is b squared. And finally, 2ab times negative 3b squared, 2 times negative 3 gives us a negative 6, a is along for the ride, and we have b times b squared giving us b cubed, so ab cubed. Looking for those in the answer choices, let's see, I looks pretty close, but there's some differences. How about E? Let's see here. I think that's got everything. Yep, 2a cubed b, 8a squared b squared, 6ab cubed. We got it all in choice E, so that's going to be 10 with an E. For the last 5 problems on this puzzle, they've really pulled out all the stops here. You'll notice in the answer choices here, these all involve 3 terms with multiple variables in them. So this is just going to be a big mess if we're not careful. So going through, and for number 11 here, carefully distributing x squared y to each of those terms. Multiplying by the first term, we've got a 2 out in front. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th, and y is just along for the ride. Next, multiplying by negative 4xy, that's going to be negative 4, and then x squared times x is x cubed, and y times y is y squared. And then finally, multiplying by that last term, x squared is still there, and then y times y squared is going to be y cubed, so x squared, y cubed. Now if I can find that in these answer choices, it looks like, oh, S is close. S, that was mean. They have almost everything in S, except that the x and the y are reversed with the exponents, and then we have a 4 instead of a 3 here, so it's not S. Let's keep looking, though. Here's another one that begins with 2x to the 4th y. We've got minus 4x cubed y squared. That's good. And then x squared y cubed. Yep, we've got y, and that's going to be box 11. On this problem, we have negative 2xy squared getting distributed to everything. So going one at a time here, negative 2 times 2, that's a negative 4. X times x to the 4th is x to the 5th, and then that y squared is still hanging around. Next, negative 2 times negative 5, that's 10. X times x squared, that's x cubed, And then y squared times y squared, 2 plus 2, that's y to the 4th. Finally, negative 2 times negative 3 is 6. The x is still hanging around. And we have y squared times y to the 4th. 2 plus 4 gives me an exponent of y to the 6th. So looking for all of this stuff, looks like e and u have the same thing in the beginning. But then u, we've got the 10x squared y to the 4th. And, oh, that's a little bit different, 20x squared y cubed. Do we have any other things that begin with negative 4x to the 5th y squared? We do. Choice n. N, it looks like, actually does have all that other stuff. So we've got n going in box 12. Here we go with another one of these, multiplying 4x cubed y by all of the things in the parentheses. So 4 times a negative 1 is a negative 4. X cubed times x squared. 3 plus 2 gives me x to the 5th, and then y times y is y squared. Now we have 4 times 2 is 8. X cubed times x, that's x to the 3 plus 1, so 4. Y times y is y squared. And then finally, 4 times negative 5, that's negative 20. X cubed times x is x to the 4th. Y times y squared, y to the 3rd. And that is going to be, looks like answer choice E. U was pretty similar, but E had the 20 and the 8. Well, they both had the 20, but this one has the 8. So we're going with E for box 13, right there. On this one, we are trying to carefully multiply negative x squared y cubed by everything. And we're dealing with a negative, so got to be extra careful here. So we have a negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. X squared times x is x cubed. And y to the 3rd times another y to the 3rd. 3 plus 3 gives me y to the 6th. Next, we have a negative times a negative is a positive. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. And then y cubed and y squared is y to the 5th, 3 plus 2. Finally, negative times a 3 gives me a negative 3. X squared and x cubed is x to the 5th. And then y cubed times y, 3 plus 1 gives me 4 for the exponent. Now I want a negative 7x cubed y to the 6th. And it looks like I've got t or I, one of those. It looks like the next thing we need is x to the 4th, y to the 5th. That's in I, and we also have the negative 3x to the 5th, y to the 4th. So I for 14. Now we have our final problem, the answer to which is going to go in box 15. So let's do it. 3 times the 2, that's going to be 6. X squared times x to the 4th, 2 plus 4 is x to the 6th. Y squared times y squared, that's y to the 4th. 3 times negative 3, that's negative 9. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Y squared times y, that's 2 plus 1, so y cubed. And then finally, 3x squared y squared times negative 1 is just a negative version of all that stuff out there. So 3, negative 3, x squared, y squared. Great. What does that match up with? It looks like the only one it could be is choice F. So we got F right there. And now we're ready to go and actually see what the answer to the puzzle is. So again, the question for this riddle is, what did the girl mushroom say about the boy mushroom after their first date? Going through here, we have H-E-S. I think that's he's. And then this looks like R-E-A-L-L-Y. That would spell out really. I think we just have A then is the next one. And then fungi. So we have he's really a fun guy. Aw, isn't that sweet? All right, till next time, Mr. Sutton signing off.